Okay, hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Making Strides podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, AJ Cohen, and we have Adam Schwirt. Adam, how you doing today?
Doing all right. Is it smoky up by you?
Yeah, it's been a little bit
Oh,
smoky. I actually, for a mountain bike ride with Brady, I got the little thing where he like rides on my bike with me, and we were heading out for a ride, and I noticed it smelled pretty
yeah.
bad, like wild smell, and so I was like, dang. Let me check purple air, and the AQI for PM 2.5 was only like in the 50s, 60s. So I was like, oh, okay. Usually when you can smell it as a non super approved rule of thumb, like if you can smell it, definitely
That's
at least check
definitely.
quality. Right. It was well below the like 100-ish mark that I would have maybe called off the mountain bike ride. But yeah, so we enjoyed that. But anyway,
Yeah, I walked outside
cool.
yesterday and like it looked like there's a filter in front of the mountains, and it's like, oh, that's not good. Yeah, so I did the same
The
thing, checked it
worst.
out, and I mean, looked okay. So yeah. But anyway, let's
Yeah.
we're talking about gait and form and stuff today.
Yeah. So I realized not that long ago, I sent Adam a message. I was like, dude, we're the Making Strides podcast, and we haven't talked about the actual stride yet, like the actual running form, one of the hottest topics in the market. So we definitely want to talk a little bit about running form. We probably have talked a little bit here and there about certain aspects of running form, how it fits into the other kind of topics that we've covered on other episodes. But this is something that is definitely overdue in terms of talking about it. There's so many misconceptions here, so many conversations that I have on a weekly basis with patients about running form. And I think we can really make this a really awesome, resourceful episode for people talking about what is or isn't perfect form and the whole concept of perfect form, heel striking, if heel striking is actually the devil, and things like that. Really quick, Adam, what are you excited to talk about running form wise?
I think just the notion of people being potentially surprised at what we say, you know, 'cause
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
as black and
That's,
white for us.
yes. That I think is a really good start. When I actually talk about when I do workshops about running form, some of the first things I bring up are the fact that have you even tried to look at some of those infographics online of what perfect running form is like? The average runner can't pat their head and rub their belly at the same time. And then you have this graphic that's just, oh yeah, butt tight, tucked under, standing up tall, arm swing can do this, but not this. And then your feet have to do this, but not that. And it's just holy crap. And then I'm going to start us off with a related fun fact, just bringing a runner's awareness to their running form, not even changing anything, but just bringing their awareness to their running form reduces their running economy. Okay. And then any changes to their running form is going to definitely reduce their running economy, even if it's a good change, which we'll talk about later. But it's going to, at first, drop their running economy. Your most economical, efficient things that you do in life are things that are like automatic to you. And the second you make them not automatic, then they're going to cost more energy. So, like your breathing, everybody right now, like it's funny how humans can't think of the negative, right? So, if I say, oh, don't think about your breathing, now you're thinking about your breathing, right? And now you're like, oh, crap, now I have to like keep breathing on command until it becomes automatic again. And it's a little laborious, right? Anyway, that was my little quick example there. But yeah, so it's just very interesting. I love talking about, I can't believe we haven't talked about running form yet.
Yeah, it's wild. But like you said, I'm sure we've touched on it here and there, just never kind of fully explored it.
Cool. So, myth number one that we're going to talk about today is Adam, the myth that there is a perfect, proper running form and that everyone should pretty much have certain qualities or characteristics of their running form so that they can get the most out of their running. You want to hit it
Sure.
first?
So first and foremost, people have different limb lengths. They have different strength, power, motor control, and all of that is going to result in you moving in your own unique way. So by default, you should probably run to some extent in your own unique way. There's nothing very definitive. There are certainly certain characteristics that we do like and we look for that do play a role in potentially injury risks to certain areas if you have, an injury history. But largely, I like the way, Chris Johnson refers to it as like your running signature, or I've seen other people refer to it as your running fingerprint. There's some unique stuff about you as an individual, and it should be reflected in your running.
Yeah, 100%. I think I usually use these two examples. One of them is a little bit maybe not so great to use or politically correct anymore, whatever you want to say, but with everything going on with Camille Herron. um, for folks who don't know, I don't know. I just, the rumors are that she and her agent or somebody she knows her partner were like potentially, allegedly sabotaging certain other ultra runners' Wikipedia pages and then adding to her own. Anyway, regardless of that, I like to use her as an example of a very high level runner, a very successful, accomplished runner who looks a little weird when she runs, right? And then, okay, let's take another one. One of the world's best female distance runners, Prisha Jeptu. Like she as well, like they call her like the egg beater because of how she runs and her knees and like the motion they make. And so how can we really look at some of the best runners in the world? Look at Jim Walmsley and he's running, what is it? Like he's in the low 160s cadence running like a 5-minute mile. Okay. So what does that say about everything that we know about what is perfect running form? What it says is that if some of the best can do something that certain people think is terrible, then obviously those people are wrong. Like the people who think that's terrible, they're wrong, right? Because there's no way you can get to be the best of the best not optimizing every single little thing that you can optimize. And they've optimized it, but they've optimized it for their own anatomy and their own physiology. Right. And I think that's just a good example that if you're trying to force some sort of running form on yourself that it doesn't comply with your unique physiology and anatomy, you're going to do yourself a disservice, a major one.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you're trying your circle, you're trying to fit yourself into, or no, other way around. Sorry. You're a square and you're trying to fit yourself into a round, hole. You're trying to align with this certain thing that maybe doesn't align with you very well. Physically, mentally, emotionally, like, I don't care. And, let's just be more open to what you think and feel intuitively is best for you, not what somebody else tells you, unless it's us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the next question a lot of you all who are listening might think of is like, when would we change somebody's running form? And I think we'll get to that. Had a little bit of an order we were going in. But let's just talk real quick. Let's transition into like heel striking. Okay. So for example, I think heel striking gets a pretty bad rap, but the reality is that the majority of runners are rear foot strikers is really more the accepted term. And so the majority of runners are rear foot strikers at all levels. The majority are. And there's nothing inherently bad about heel striking or rear foot striking. And so, Adam, do you know what your foot strike pattern is?
It's kind of mid to forefoot.
Okay, so Adam is an outlier.
Yeah.
Adam's like a lefty. Nobody likes a lefty. No, I'm just kidding. So it is what it is, right? And it just depends on the terrain. It depends on a lot of different variables, right?
One.
And so, yeah, speed, I'm sure. So actually, I do really love feeling springy and powerful, moving more towards a midfoot strike when I'm doing intervals of energy system work and just faster running. And I've learned over the years that sometimes I get some pushback in the calf and Achilles when I do that. And so I've actually, over the years, I've learned to just fall back a little bit more on my rear foot, heel strike a little bit more when I am running faster. I try to keep that in mind. And I find that like my calf and Achilles just doesn't push back as much when I'm starting to plug back into something like speed work after a lot of time off of speed work. So that's totally fine. There's nothing bad about that. But your terrain uphill, most people are more likely to obviously strike midfoot, forefoot. Downhill, people are more likely to strike rear foot. And that's just going to change just depending on the person. Hey, I'm thinking of a fun fact, Adam, that we can throw in here. Do you know the fun fact I'm thinking of?
I have one. Actually, I have two in my own head. I don't know what you're thinking.
Okay. Why don't you just give a fun fact, and then if it's not the fun fact I was thinking of, then I'll just say my fun fact.
So first one for me, and probably the most impactful, is that when people ask me this question, like, well, if we move to a 4-foot strike and we just observe you over a year, and then we move you back to a heel strike and we observe you for a year, your injury rates are going to be the same. So it doesn't really matter what you do. What changes is where you're stressing the body and where you're potentially going to get injured then. So it's kind of a wash in my eyes, the way I understand things. So whatever feels best for you, most natural, like go with that.
Yeah. And so just to clarify, what you're saying is at the point at which you're fully adapted to the striking pattern, regardless of striking pattern, your injury rates will be the same.
Yes.
Just different places, right? Probably more foot, lower leg, calf, maybe hip or knee if you're doing a rear foot strike, but then calf. I didn't finish my thought. But calf, Achilles if it's more 4-foot. But anyway, yeah, 100%. Now, I wanted to make that clarification because if you were naturally a heel striker and you move to 4-foot striking, you're going to increase your injury rate. But you're saying once you're full, or conversely, same thing, but you're saying once assuming and controlling for having spent a lot of time at that striking pattern and being fully adapted. That's what you're
Yes.
saying. Okay, cool. My fun fact was not the same. This is great.
Oh,
Save me
perfect.
a variety of fun facts. Oh, I got to remember the percent though. Okay. Runners come in and they're like, yeah, I'm a 4-foot striker,
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool. And because blah, 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 or whatever they say. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, this is the fun fact about the percentage of people who are right or wrong in terms of being accurate on what kind of striking pattern they have, right?
Yes.
Do you know
I
this?
want to say
Okay, yeah.
it's close to 50%.
I thought it was in the 40s for sure, but let's just call it like 43 or something like
It's a
that.
large
I can ask, I have
percentage.
ChatGPT still up. Next time you're talking, I'll type to ChatGPT, but let's just call it 43. We'll make it the same as, isn't 43% never mind. Is it, having your multiple shoes in your rotation can potentially reduce your injuries by
That one's
43%. Isn't that the same?
39%.
Yeah. 39. Okay. That one's close. Okay. I knew it was close to it, but anyway. So yeah, the funny thing is that unless you get it formally assessed by somebody who knows what they're doing and it's in a controlled environment and the variables are the same, right? You're not like, there's a high percentage that you are going to be incorrect about what you perceive as your own foot strike pattern. If you like, so everybody who's listening, if you haven't had your foot strike pattern assessed formally and professionally, there's like a 40 something % chance that you are incorrect about what kind of foot strike pattern you have. Fun fact. Most people just don't even, not most people, a lot of people, not most, obviously it is a minority, but a lot of people don't know what kind of foot strike pattern they have.
Yeah. I've actually seen this in real time because I always give people
Me
the
too.
opportunity to watch themselves run after a video before I say anything. I just want to see kind of what they think, what they believe, whatever. And every once in a while I'd be like, oh, I thought I was, landing more 4-foot and like I'm very much heel or vice versa. So it's just very interesting that until you know, you don't know.
Exactly. I love that fun fact. You say that at a workshop and everybody's, huh? Okay. Moving on. Okay. The next concept that we wanted to talk about was, does running form prevent injuries? So is there a way you can change your running form to prevent injuries? Or conversely, if you get injured, is it because of your running form?
So let's start with the first one. I think if you ask me on a test and we're going to be very technical, I think the answer is yes. If we're going to be like specific to a region or something, because as we mentioned, shifting that foot or that how you strike the ground.
So you're saying running form prevents injuries?
Let me clarify.
Good
So
running
again,
form
we're being
prevents
very
injuries.
specific here. So if I went to, okay, maybe not use the word prevention, but if I want to reduce injury risk
Okay.
at above the knee, we'll say, and I wanted to drop 4-foot strike, technically,
We're getting very
yes.
specific now.
And, if I wanted to limit my risk of an Achilles tendon issue, I wanted to adopt a heel strike, technically, yes, that would reduce my injury risk, or would be a contributing factor just because it's going to reduce stress in that load relative to the alternative. Is it as a whole, just any injury on the table? I don't think so. So if we get really specific, maybe. If we look at more just globally, did you develop an injury? Yes or no? Then I'm in the camp of no. Hopefully
Yeah.
that I think
So
then make
no, I hear what you're saying. I guess I just want to clarify if we are talking to a general audience right now, I just want people to
yeah,
understand that if you're injured right now, it is not because of your running form unless you did something stupid with your running form. If you're not a 4-foot striker, okay, I did this. RSS, right? Chris says that RSS, runner stupidity syndrome. I had RSS. I've had RSS a lot. I had RSS after. Okay, I thought I was a big shot. Thought I was cool because ran my very first half marathon from scratch in 12 weeks of training from scratch. Okay, my dad, he died when I was like 18, and then one of his like friends who coworkers reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm running like a half marathon like for your dad, and we're making some shirts and stuff. Do you want in?" And I was like, "Sure." It was up in New Hampshire, Lake Winnipesaukee. Seemed super cool. So I was like, "Crap, I got 12 weeks from scratch, not running at all." And I ran for wrestling training and losing weight and all the stupid things wrestlers do. But I was not a runner. And I ran 3 times a week, started off at a 6-mile long run the first week, and then got to doing 2 10-milers before my half marathon. And I ran a 1:36. So not terrible for my first like from scratch half marathon. Pretty uninjured too. And then immediately afterwards, I was like, I'm going to be a runner. I went and bought some New Balance Minimus shoes and was reading Born to Run
perfect.
and just wanted to like switch to more of the midfoot kind of thing. And what do you know? Had some massive like arch pain pop up and decided to basically quit running for 2 years. I did the opposite. I did competitive Olympic style weightlifting instead for a number of years after that before I started running again. So I would say I made some pretty stupid decisions, and the running form change was a huge part of that. But if you were injured right now, I would say that the reason, if there is a reason you got injured, it's not because you have improper running form.
I think that too, because this kind of dovetails nicely into like when would we change this? So I think it's
Yeah.
equally important to understand that like, okay, if you have an injury going on and we do change something and that makes you feel better, tolerate running better at that point in time, it's not because you were doing the other thing. It's probably because we just shifted loads around and relatively offloaded that area. And that's all that happened. Like there's no further explanation needed in my mind.
No, totally. For sure. Yeah. Okay. When I'm assessing somebody's running form, that we all probably have a little bit of a different process. And I'm actually just about to enter. I got Rich Willie's course. Did you get his
But
course?
no, I would like to someday.
Yeah. You can't get credit for it, but maybe you can log in and look at some of it if you want. But I would highly recommend just buying it because he's
Yeah.
kick ass. But yeah, I'm about to look at his like gait analysis portion, and I'm curious to learn more there. But based on just where I am now, what I typically do is I really just want to. One of the first things I look at that's cool is going to be that sagittal view. I want to basically look at that point of initial contact.
So you're
I'm
looking
trying to.
from the
I'm
side.
trying to.
Right. So
Yes, exactly. And I'm trying to highlight just something that once again dovetails nicely into like when we might change something. And this is one of the most common things that I might try and change because it's pretty low risk. So this whole concept of overstriding. So this whole concept of overstriding is, I don't know. People don't really know what it is. Sometimes it's synonymous with like heel striking in general, and it just frustrates me a lot. And what I like to do is define overstriding a little bit as I would say that if your shank angle or shin angle at initial contact is greater than 10 degrees and your knee flexion angle at initial contact is like less than, or yeah, less than what, 15 degrees or so. I don't know. That's on the brink there of some overstriding. And if you're dealing with some knee pain or something like that, I'm probably gonna be like, okay, we should probably try and adjust this and see how that addresses your symptoms. And there's there was a study that basically showed that like a 5% increase in step rate or cadence can reduce force at the knee by up to 20%. And I find that these individuals who are presenting with a less vertical shin at initial contact, less knee flexion, they are more likely going to be a candidate for that type of benefit from just a small change, like a 5% increase in step rate. So that is something that is a very kind of low key, low risk thing that I try a lot. Okay, somebody's got another example like step rate or cadence, maybe a good little manipulation might be good. Would be like if somebody's running really narrow, maybe they have some like lateral hip pain. You can cue them, hey, run a little wider, right? Pretend like you're running on the outsides of a piece of tape. Like just run a little wider. It may potentially help with symptoms. But you could also just up their step rate 5 to 10%. And then that we actually see that widens their anyway. So it's just such, it's not the silver magic bullet, whatever the word I'm looking for is. It's not like a cure all, but there are a lot of cases when it comes to knee pain, hip pain, foot pain, a lot of cases where some people are showing a little bit of a sign that their step rate has some room for wiggle. Then that's sometimes like the first thing that I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
Would you
definitely.
say the
I
same?
would
What's your
I
approach
would
kind of on
mostly
that?
echo that. Again, we're talking in the space that somebody is already in pain, has an injury that we're manipulating. The next step I go from there, and where I would start if somebody didn't have pain but had a really low step rate, is asking why are we using that strategy? Are
Yep.
we lacking, strength, the rate of force development, or just the coordination? Like what piece are we missing that's not allowing you to turn your feet over a little bit quicker? 'Cause I mean, that if we look at speed or like your pace, it's your step rate times your step length, and that make that. So obviously we need to, that's a window into an opportunity to get you going a little bit faster, which is what a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love that. That's just yeah, and if somebody's not in pain, like, why am I even looking at their is my
Yeah.
first question.
Unless it's
Okay,
super
so
wild, then like, okay, maybe then, especially if they're really
yeah.
concerned with it. But most of the time I've moved more and more from like, we're going to use this running cue and address, this specific thing, and more to like just taking a step back. Like, why are we utilizing this strategy?
Mhm.
It's like, I want you to be smooth, relaxed, and fluid. And the more we kind of cue and correct and focus on things, kind of you were alluding to earlier, like the more stiff and rigid you become, the more like you're thinking about things. And
Mhm.
it looks like you've watched too many YouTubes on running form, what it ends up looking like.
Yeah, totally. Here's the thing is, like, most people's running form will self-optimize over time. So if you take, like, a new runner and maybe they aren't super efficient yet or whatever you wanna call it, economical, they typically will improve their running form just with simply running more and getting that consistent experience and exposure to the body. The body's pretty good at figuring out compensations and optimizing for efficiency when doing the same thing over and over. So we tend to see that a lot. And I guess that kind of leads me to maybe what I want to maybe turn into the last topic here is there are some actionable ways you can improve your running form, so to speak.
Can I
And I
plug in
would
a fun
say,
fact real quick?
yeah, go for it.
Like if you take, biomechanists, mathematicians, whatever, and you have them, take everybody's like body lengths and what is like the most optimal, like on paper, run the math, what is the most optimal cadence? An experienced runner will be within 3% of that. So
Yeah.
of course you got to make it to that. What is experience? I don't know. And you got to make it to that point. But, just because of show, like highlighting what you're saying, that the more you do it, the better and more proficient you're going to get at it.
Yep. I would say there are three major categories that we can use to improve running form, so to speak, or optimize for whatever. And I like the word optimize because improve is really not always what needs to be done or is being done when changing somebody's running form. Optimization can mean a lot of things where whether somebody's dealing with an injury or they're a newer runner trying to improve their running economy, any of that sort of stuff. And so I think that just getting the experience and the volume of running, like doing the deed of just running more, having the years and years of consistency and experience is going to improve your running economy. And so then some resistance training and strength training type stuff is going to be the next thing. Okay. So from a slow, heavy resistance training perspective, and then also from just from a plyometric perspective, there's certain ways that we can make some changes to the way that you're running just to optimize some things potentially. I think probably strides fit in there too. It just from the neuromuscular component, it'll probably work a little bit similarly to the strength training component. What we're basically doing is it's this neuromuscular enhancement of the contribution to the running that we're really modifying. And then the last category is, I don't know, there's not a whole ton of evidence to support this yet, but you can look at, and there are theories that with specific exercise, we can address certain aspects of your running. I would say it's going to depend on the scenario, and we can make this work however we want with semantics. But if you have a history of lateral hip pain, maybe you do have a little bit of a narrow running stance. By doing a ton of hip abduction or glute med, glute min work, you're not, by the research standards currently, you're not going to reliably change your running form with that strength training and focusing on the lateral hip. But you can create a more resilient and robust lateral hip that is just better equipped to deal with those forces. And that may affect how you run in some indirect way. But there are these other, especially with the Run Easy that we use, both Adam and I using this Run Easy, it recommends certain types of exercises for certain types of decrements in your performance. We don't have a ton of evidence yet to suggest that just works out the way we think it does yet, but I still want to keep it as this third pending category. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say, because it's kind of, for me, it's always been like reverse engineering. Like, okay, what are you gonna do? You're gonna load that region. Why does it only work one way and not the other way? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna do some specific strength work. We're gonna do something more plyometric. Then we're gonna get back to running. Why can't it go the other way and be protective? Seems like things are moving that direction, that it does seem to be protective. There's a few papers out now that would indicate that. But also, for me, it's like, okay, that's where we're going to start. But then everything we do from there is going to get more and more like running, so that when we get into that running, it's going to be a seamless transition for you. And that when we are focusing on a certain region, you're going to be able to understand that piece better on a subconscious level. So it just transfers over seamlessly to your running.
Amen to that. Cool. No, I think we covered everything I wanted to cover. I got a lot of it out there that I really wanted to just put out there on our platform, in our podcast. And so I encourage everybody who's listening to just reevaluate their preconceptions and mindset surrounding their running form, and maybe just reassess that and reach out to us with any sort of revelations or comments. And if you guys want, we could talk about lots of different aspects of running form, some that we talked about today at further length, or other topics that we didn't even touch that pertain to running form. It helps to give us feedback if you guys have any sort of preference there. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had. Anything else, Adam? Final thoughts?
My final thought is like, here, basically the one cue I give nowadays: does this feel relaxed, smooth, and fluid? It's a yes or no. And as well as visual too, if we have that piece. The answer is yes, just keep doing what you're doing. If the answer is no, is there something we've done leading into that you can tune into to maybe think about briefly to bring that smoothness and fluidity to your running? Or do we need to, refine things a little bit further so that we can do that kind of on the fly? And that's a brief that literally is, you're running. Within 2 seconds, ask yourself, answer it, adjust if needed. That's it. And then you're just on it.
Love it.
On your run.
Love it. Cool. I think that pretty much covers it. This is where we usually say, go make some strides. And quite literally, maybe you do, because we just talked about how strides can neuromuscularly facilitate some improved running economy potentially. So yeah, go make some strides, everybody. And have a great day.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.